That's the reason for the name, is capture the flag, right? In all these cases, you're trying to somehow find a secret, some digital treasure.
There are two types of capture the flag competitions. One is called jeopardy style. The other type of CTF is the attack defense one.
Whoever conceived of this idea was already trying to find flaws in it as they were conceiving it, sort of thought about how can they reduce the risk. Do you need to be like a super security expert to tackle them?
There are 5 different categories for challenges. These include crypto, forensics, web, binary reverse engineering, protocol analysis. The different challenges, they have different difficulties. So you could also pick on the simpler ones and see how it goes from there.
Hi, I'm Guy Pojarny, CEO and co-founder of Sneak. And you're listening to The Secure Developer, a podcast about security for developers, covering security tools and practices you can and should adopt into your development workflow. The Secure Developer is brought to you by Heavybit, a program dedicated to helping startups take their developer products to market. For more information, visit heavybit.com. If you're interested in being a guest on this show, or if you would like to suggest a topic for us to discuss, find us on Twitter at TheSecureDev. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Secure Developer. Today, we actually have a slightly unusual episode. We're not going to talk necessarily about best practices, but rather about capture the flag, CTF, these types of security competitions. And to do that, I actually have my co-founder here from Sneak, Danny Grander. Danny, thanks for coming to the show.
Thank you, and hello.
And actually, I guess before we dig into CTFs, Danny, can you maybe say a little bit about your history, about how you got into this whole world of security?
Nowadays in Sneak, I'm responsible for the security side of things, mainly dealing with vulnerability database and collection of that data. And in my past, I've been doing development for about 10 years. Later, switched to research, where I've mostly been doing reverse engineering and hunting for vulnerabilities in different systems, but mostly embedded ones.
So we started this chapter about CTFs because you've participated in a bunch of them. But before we kind of go deep in, can I ask you sort of to say a few words about what is CTF? What is this capture the flag?
Yeah, so CTF is essentially a hacking competition between teams or individuals. They compete against one another and measured by their skill in different areas. All are related to security. So this can be cryptography, steganography, finding vulnerabilities, reverse engineering, web challenges, and the like. So
this is all like different aspects of, I guess, information security, sort of still
right.
Mostly digital, but all sorts of digital security.
Yeah, mostly, I haven't seen CTFs that do physical security thing, but I could guess that there are some.
Yeah, that they exist. I guess, if they're going to do lockpicking sessions at DEF CON, then, there's no reason why you wouldn't include those in the CTF competition as well.
Yeah, actually, now that you mentioned that, in the last DEF CON conference, in the car hacking village, there was a car hacking CTF. I haven't participated in that one, but I know there was one.
It's funny, the car hacking village, like every conference should have a car hacking village, just for kicks. So CTF is this sort of hacker competition, and people come in. I guess, what's the typical format? Is it like time boxed? How does it work?
Yeah, so basically there are 2 types of capture the flag competitions. One is called jeopardy style, where there are usually dozens of standalone challenges that each has a score, usually related to the difficulty of the challenge. And the team that wins is the team that solves the biggest number of challenges by the time the competition ends, which usually, it depends, but it can run for a day or for 2. The other type of CTF is the attack defense one, where unlike the jeopardy style, each team has to protect their systems, their services, but also attack others. It's a much more dynamic and in a way represents the reality better in that sense. So, and the skill set is also a little bit different that is needed for that CTF. You both need to find vulnerabilities and attack the other teams with these vulnerabilities, with the exploits you create from finding these vulnerabilities, but also make sure that you are defended against those.
How does I guess let me sort of split the 2 apart, just sort of dig a little bit into them. So like for the jeopardy style CTF, what's an example of a question? What's an example of a challenge?
The one I personally participated for several times was CCC, the Chaos Communication Congress Capture the Flag. It's a conference, and during that conference, there is a 48 hours Capture the Flag competition. So there are about 5 different categories for challenges. So these include crypto, forensics, web, binary reverse engineering, protocol analysis. So challenges in any of these are pretty much different, right? Like, so classic, I would say, reverse engineering challenge would include a binary that, you have to reverse engineer, find a vulnerability, and possibly you also get an IP address and port where that service that you're looking at is listening on. So then you actually need to develop an exploit and attack that system, getting the flag, which is most often is a string or a hash or something like that, where you submit the solution to the competition website and get the point. So a crypto challenge could be breaking some crypto algorithm that, again, might be in a form of a binary that you are given or just some ciphertext. And you need to figure out what are you looking at and how to tackle that.
Cool. So I guess that's the reason for the name is capture the flag, right? In all these cases, you're trying to somehow find a secret, some digital treasure or flag that's either hidden behind a crypto algorithm or hidden behind a server.
Right. And the attack defense type of capture the flag competition, it's similar to the outdoors game, the capture the flag game, where every team has a flag on their system and each team should attack the others and capture the flag by compromising others' systems. Unlike in the Jeopardy style, where you should have kind of solved each challenge at a time, and the flag is somewhere there, either encrypted inside the data, if it's a crypto challenge, or a file or some string that is you can get to only after you attack and exploit the system.
So for these different types of challenges, do you need to be like a super security expert that controls all these different attributes to tackle them? Like how many people, I guess, on a typical CTF team?
Yeah, so usually each person on a team has some kind of specialty. There are some people that do all the challenges, but yeah, typically we have in our team we have about 20 members, but not in every capture the flag competition all of us actually compete. And so just an example, for the last DEF CON capture the flag, it was an attack defense style competition. We were 9 people on site and 3 others were helping from back home.
Oh, cool. So actually not everybody had to necessarily be there in person to participate in the CTF.
And that's for the attack defense. Usually the attack defense is limited by the number of teams and the number of members that can take part in the competition. And in this kind of capture the flag, there are qualifying rounds because in the end, in the finals, there is only a limited number of teams that can take part and have their system being protected. So unlike the Jeopardy styles, which usually is open to unlimited number of players, they don't have to be on site on the conference or whatever is taking place. It can be, anyone could just sign up and join and play the game.
Yeah, cool. So I guess the Jeopardy style ones sound pretty straightforward, right? It's basically a quiz, and it happens to be sort of a challenge. You go in, you do it. Yeah, and it's kind of cool, I guess, in today's sort of digital world, you can just stand up sandboxed environment with as many of those as you want, or some environment where people can go and just sort of get that flag. There's no limit at how many people can attempt a riddle at the same time. But the attack defense, you go against one another. So if there's 1,000 teams, it becomes pretty impractical to kind of work.
Right, and something to add to your previous question is that in the attack defense one, there is, beside the technical skill of finding the vulnerability and writing an exploit, there is also a big operational part of timing the exploits and trying to figure out game theory things, figure out what the other team might be doing. And there is a whole set of things opens up for you because you can steal other exploits. You can just wait for your service to be attacked, sniff the traffic. You could just try to, send random traffic to the other team. One good example of these kind of things that I've seen in the last DEF CON CTF, where a team would backdoor their binary, their service, other teams, including mine, would assume that it's a fixed binary, that one that is protected against a vulnerability, would just take it as is, but sometimes it would actually fix the vulnerability, but it also would also include a backdoor that allowed that team that created the binary just to easily exploit it anytime and only by them, because they know about the existence of the backdoor. So this is the kind of things that can happen in attack defense, and it's an open world there. So yeah, and the Jeopardy style one is just standalone challenges, and they're really more suitable for a person to take on and try to solve, and usually really can be limited to a person that has a specific skill that solves the challenge.
Yeah, so I guess in the attack defense environments, it sounds like some things are visible. I guess in any one of these cases, you need to set some context. So you can see that, I guess, another company, another team has patched their binaries, so you can see it and you can choose to use it. Yeah. What's to keep you from just taking your systems offline, right? It's not, right. Like say, hey, I gained a good number of points. I don't want anybody to hack my servers. I'll just unplug. Yeah, so it's a good question. And the answer is that for the competition, the organizers, they constantly check for the availability of your services. So if your services are down, if you just went and added some firewall rules that prevent any communication to your services, you're basically losing points and you're penalized for that. And same goes for, suppose you patched your service and it's now protected against the vulnerability, but its performance went down. Also, you get penalized for that. So again, there's a lot of real-time decision-making you need to do about what's good for you, what you can live with, what you should fix. Unlike, again, in the Jeopardy style, that it's more simpler and defined. I guess you can trust that in a hacking competition, everybody's trying to hack the rules and have done so many times in the past. So it's probably pretty bulletproof to sort of find those types of shortcuts and to sort of factor them into the counts. So in the last DEF CON and CTF, there was a bit of an unusual CTF added into it, right? Like it was this DARPA CTF. What was so sort of interesting about that one? So this year, before the actual CTF, there was another Capture the Flag game played by computers, by machines. This was one that DARPA, it's called the Cyber Grand Challenge. DARPA's attempt to improve and advance the automated vulnerability discovery and protection field. Or at least that's what they say. Exactly. So there were actually, during the last year, there were different qualification rounds between different systems, and the final event, the finals, there were 8 different machines, different systems that were competing one against the other. And the winner would join the main CTF event. So there were 15 teams on the CTF. One of them were a completely automated computer system competing against us 14 human teams. It actually did pretty well, surprisingly or not. It was really interesting to see how a computer could find vulnerabilities, create an exploit for them, and protect against them. So obviously, some of the things the machine was doing really well. For example, protection is something that is, it comes with a cost, but it's in a way easier for a machine to do. And the cost is usually performance. But for the vulnerability sides, usually the human is better. But again, the machine could try different inputs for discovering vulnerability in a software, but it, of course, could do it really quickly compared to a human. So they were seeing all these human teams competing against machine, and machine is not being the last. It was really nice and interesting. I mean, it's crazy. It sounds super cool from a technology perspective, right? Sort of seeing the level of technology and seeing this work, and the fact that an automated attacker, defender, sort of security team can actually stand up to a reasonable place in a competition amongst already really good sort of security people and hackers. But it's also scary. It's entirely scary when you think about that type of technology just sort of floating around the internet, and people in cybercrime or people that are well funded having access to these types of automated machines. maybe it means we need some machines on our side as well, on the protecting side, for us to have a bit of a shot at defending ourselves.
It's a really good point. And actually, one of the special things about the Cybercrime Challenge is that they created a special environment for the challenges and the competition. So in the end, it's a Linux system, but they created different binary format and different from an ELF, something that has some reduced functionality, a reduced number of system calls that it supports. And that, again, was done for both simplification and gaining determinism in all the, again, attack and defense sides, but also to prevent the easy use or abuse of these achievements of the different system in the real world.
Yeah, interesting. I guess that comes back again to that sort of breaker's mindset, which is probably whoever conceived of this idea was already trying to find flaws in it as they were conceiving it, and sort of thought about how can they reduce the risk. So, I think the CTF is cool, and I think there's a lot of good stuff to read about it. And we talked about conferences. I think DEF CON is like the most popular, CCC being another good one. I guess, are those the only places where CTF competitions run? If I want to participate in a CTF, do I need to find one of these conferences and go there?
Right. So almost in every security conference nowadays, there is a CTF. So the big one in Europe is the CCC conference, the Chaos Communication Congress conference. It has the CCC CTF. It's a Jeopardy style. The big one in the US would be DEF CON. It's an attack defense one. But there are dozens of other conferences, and most of them have CTFs. Also, companies nowadays run their own CTF games. So Google was, this year actually, was having a CTF game where our team Pastan won the first place, and
congrats.
They thanks, and it's interesting. They had all their challenges were it was a Jeopardy style, and the challenges were around Google services. So it's interesting to see, and for us, first of all, to learn about the different kind of services and things in Google's product. But for them, I'm sure it was useful to see how a bunch of teams get to play and attack systems that are based on Google's infrastructure or languages or services. So there is quite a lot of CTFs going around, and for somebody who wants to give it a try, I would suggest just signing up for Jeopardy-style CTF. These are open for everybody. You don't have to be in the conference, so the next Capture the Flag competition just can play it. And another thing is to go back and look at previous competitions. Usually, definitely for the major CTFs, there are quite a lot of write-ups, and all the challenges are open. So the information is there. You just could try and take one challenge and try to solve it, and of course see the different solutions and learn from that. So yeah, there's quite a lot of opportunities there.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess the Jeopardy style ones, the bar is actually substantially lower than I originally thought. It sounds like the Jeopardy styles have many teams. You don't need to, pay or travel or do anything like that to join them. And they're available, and you can even kind of practice a little bit ahead of time with some of these older ones. So yeah, it sounds very useful. I also, it's an interesting play around the companies doing the CTFs. I guess on one hand it's a recruiting one, but
there's obviously a recruiting angle there. And also one thing I want to add is that the different challenges in the Jeopardy style CTFs, they have different points. Well, the difficulty is different. So you could also pick on the simpler one, the small ones, and see how it goes, and then progress from there. So that's also like a good place to start.
Yeah, and I guess the one thing to note that happened sometime earlier this year was that Facebook open sourced their CTF platform.
Right.
And I think they were using it in universities and the likes, probably at the end of the day for a similar purpose of like recruiting awareness, making people aware of the services. But it's, the fact that they've open sourced it implies that maybe at a certain size of either an event or a company, that you can just choose to do it, to even raise education and awareness amongst your employees or amongst a certain community, and just choose a bunch of challenges. And you can probably tailor the level of complexity of the challenges to the audience that you have. So not everything has to, match the top security conference tiers. That same format could happen for things that are more specific, just attuned to maybe more of a developer audience or more, an audience that's a little bit newer to security.
Right. Good example is also like in the CCC CTF, the focus mainly on reverse engineering and exploitation, while other CTFs can be more focused on web.
So, Danny, thanks for the review of CTFs. I mean, I think they're a really fun thing. I've not yet participated in one myself. I think I should make the time, and sort of go and join one of those. I guess maybe before we take off, can you share maybe one example of like the most interesting or sort of fun moment or learning that you've had from your CTFs? Do you have an example like that in mind?
So, one fun story I remember from 2 years back in a CCC CTF. There was a web challenge which required exploiting a cross-site scripting vulnerability. So there was a sort of a blog platform where what we were supposed to do is to leave a comment on the blog post and for the admin to later visit and click on a link, and well, that's where we were supposed to steal the session and get the admin credentials and all that. But because we were trying to solve this challenge on the second day, while all the other teams did that during the first day, the automation around clicking on the link on the organizer's part wasn't working. So we would understand the vulnerability, we would create the special comment and all that, but nobody clicked. So we didn't realize that that's a problem on the organizer's side. So after a lot of different attempts of finding different vulnerabilities, eventually we found a vulnerability in the whole system, and we popped a shell on the box that is running the challenge. It wasn't the intention, it wasn't and it actually didn't help us too much because we ended on a box, we got root, and we started looking for what's going on, which is much harder when you have all that different components that you need to figure out what was the challenge designed for. So eventually we contacted the organizers and they fixed the problem. But the funny part is that 1 year later, they actually liked the challenge, the vulnerability, and both the vulnerability and our exploit that they created another challenge that was exactly like that, and it was fun because for us that one was really easy to solve because we already been there. So yeah,
even an organizer of a CTF competition is not bulletproof to having vulnerabilities that they did not plan in the system itself.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this has been super fun. Thanks, Danny, for joining us, and I guess good luck in whatever future CTFs again. Keep on winning them.
Thank you for having me.
That's all we have time for today. If you'd like to come on as a guest on this show or want us to cover a specific topic, find us on Twitter @TheSecureDev. To learn more about Heavybeat, browse to heavybeat.com. You can find this podcast and many other great ones, as well as over 100 videos about building developer tooling companies, given by top experts in the field.